Good morning everyone and welcome back to Tactics Board. The festive period comes to an end for Norwich City this weekend when they take on Coventry City at Carrow Road. Frank Lampard's Coventry City, no less, and it should certainly be an interesting game from a number of perspectives. But of course, here we're going to be taking a closer look at the tactical side of things and how things might pan out strategically. First of all, we're going to take a look at the starting 11 that I think Johannes Hoff-Torp will choose for the game. Then we'll take a little bit of a closer look at Coventry and what they've been like under Lampard, some of their threats, some of their weaknesses that Norwich will look to expose. And then a little bit later on, we're going to talk about Marcelino Nunez, who obviously 2 goals in the last 2 games, but even beyond that has been an excellent player for Norwich over the last few weeks. Over the last few months, really, and probably the last couple of seasons, but it feels like he's still getting better, and we're going to take a look at how tactically he is so effective and what he gives Norwich in that midfield. But we're going to start with the predicted 11, so without further ado, here's the team I think Torrent will pick to take on the Sky Blues. So I've gone for Angus Gunn in goal, Kellen Fisher at right back, Shane Duffy and Callum Doyle in the centre of defence, with Ben Krezene at left back, Kenny McLean, Emiliano Marcondes and Marcelino Nunez in midfield, with Oscar Svartau on the right, Borja Sainz on the left and Ante Cianats through the middle up front. Now, probably the most important thing to start with is the fact that I'm recording this before Johannes Hoff-Torp's pre-match press conference. We also haven't heard anything official from the FA about a potential charge for Borja Sainz that Torp keeps talking about. So I'm going without the assumption of any surprise injuries or suspensions or anything like that. But even with that in consideration, there are a few changes that I think Torp will probably make for this one. One of them is at right back, and with Kellen Fisher, who it seems is going to be more of the home option, especially in the games that Norwich will feel they have a chance of winning. And although I wouldn't say they're clear favourites going into this one, you wouldn't put Coventry in the same bracket as a Leeds or a Sheffield United. And it could still be the sort of game where Fisher gets to enjoy a lot of possession, where he gets to show off his technical skills. And I think in those sorts of games, Torp has probably decided that he's going to play Fisher. Then when you go to places like Kenilworth Road and in those slightly more attritional games, I think that's where we'll see Jack Stacey. But that isn't the sort of fixture that I'm expecting against Coventry. So I've gone with Kellen Fisher. At right back in the midfield, there's a bit of a dilemma because Torp actually got all 4 of his players in there by putting Marcondes up front, and then obviously Slimane went off injured in the 37th minute against Luton, and then Marcondes dropped into midfield. Now, part of the fact that I haven't got Slimane in there is down to that injury, but also I just think performance-wise and in terms of the balance of the midfield, that probably is Norwich's best midfield. We know that long-term there is this issue with Slimane's fitness as well, and it has been quite a busy festive period for him with a lot of starts and a lot of game time. And I feel like with Ante Cianats likely to be coming back into the team up front, you have to sacrifice one of those. And even if Slimane isn't injured, which I expect he probably will be, I'd say that 3 is probably the best one that Torp has available to him. And then I'm also expecting 2 changes on the front line. And I think it's probably the sort of game that Oscar Svartau will thrive on as well. A little bit more space to attack, and we'll come on to Coventry. But the way that they try to do things does actually leave teams a little bit more vulnerable. It opens up space, and I think we've seen from Svartau that he's really good at taking a touch into that space, at beating the first man. And once he does that, then when he can stride into that space and he can show his technical quality in terms of passing and running, I think that's when he's at his best. And this could be a really good game for him. Again, it's similar to the sort of Fisher-Stacey debate in terms of the sort of player that Torrent will want to go with. I think we saw Onel Hernandez and the reasons why he's suited to a game like it was against Luton. But maybe this is more of a Svartau game at home against Coventry. And it's similar with Ante Cianats. I think you could see actually that Norwich were missing a focal point before he came on in the game. And although I still felt like there were times where he could have been a bit more switched on and a bit more involved, Physically, he was a decent presence again. His pressing was very good. And when the ball was on the floor and he was trying to win it, he was actually doing a really good job. I think in the air, he can still do a little bit better, and that's something that Norwich will want him to work on. It's something that Torup actually has been open about. But I did feel tactically that he gave them a bit of a presence and a bit of a focal point that they'll probably want, just to stretch the play a little bit and allow them to play that possession-based game, even in a game that probably will be a little bit more technical. I know it sounds like I'm maybe referencing the physicality when I talk about a focal point and a striker up there, but also just somebody who can push that back line a little bit further back and can run in behind. And although I think Seaman still has some work to do on that as well, I think he probably is the best option Norwich have available to them at the moment. And of course, after Ashley Barnes' return to Burnley last night, they don't really have too many options. So I think Seaman probably is going to start through the middle, and it feels like it probably is time for a few changes, not only because of the tactical differences from game to game for Norwich, but also just because it has been such a busy period and they do need to spread those minutes out at the moment. Now to talk about Coventry a little bit, and I did allude to the fact that they're a bit of an attacking team, and that's what Lampard promised when he went into the club, and that's what he's delivered so far. Of course, there have been sort of mixed results, but what they want to do is go and be expansive and attack and try to create space and make the most of that. One of the ways that they do that is by spreading themselves really, really wide and then using overlaps so that they can sort of create that space for those fullbacks to then go and get around the outside of their opposite numbers. So Norwich do need those wingers tracking back, and on the right-hand side, if it's Svartau, I don't think they'll have any problems there, but there maybe is some work for Borja Sainz to do, and I think we all know that he's happy to, put a bit of strength behind a tackle, and when he's in it, he's very happy to give it his absolute 100%, but sometimes he just switches off or he gets frustrated and he doesn't do that tracking back. And given the fact that Coventry can be so effective in wide areas, that's something that you'd say Norwich will need to work on. But also it gives them the opportunity to counter-attack, because that wide, expansive system does leave the gaps. When you win that ball, if, for example, the left back can stop it going from the central midfielder to the right winger, as was actually the case against Cardiff when Callum O'Dowda went and started a counter-attack basically all by himself because he had so much space to exploit. If you can do that, if you can nip in at the right moment and you can jump and win the ball in advantageous areas, Coventry do leave themselves quite exposed, and there isn't much consideration in their structure at times to what happens if they lose the ball. So although Norwich will want to dominate things in a possession sense, and they'll want to have most of the ball, there is also an opportunity that if they stay switched on and if they know what they're doing when Coventry are trying to attack them, if they can turn over the ball, even in positions that aren't particularly high up the pitch and normally you wouldn't feel were especially advantageous, they can be against Coventry. But there are definitely strengths to the away team. They've shown that under Lampard so far, and it does feel like a team that's improving. So also definitely to be wary of, and it should be quite an interesting tactical matchup between these two teams in NR1. I wanted to finish with a bit of a discussion about Marcelino Nunez, who I think we can all agree has been excellent in the last few weeks, has produced two obviously huge moments in the festive period for Norwich, two very good strikes, and I think he's somebody who is improving still, even though he has been at Norwich and actually impressing for a long, long while now. He was linked with a move to Everton, an interest from Everton in the Chilean press last night, and you can tell that his performances are starting to warrant that attention from elsewhere. And when that happens, I think there tends to be a bit of analysis about what's so good about them. And I think there are a few very obvious things when it comes to Nunez. Of course, the work rate, the amount of ground that he covers, that's something that even Dean Smith was praising a few years ago. And also the technical quality, I think, is obvious to anyone who's even seen him do a warm-up. He's actually just a really fun player to watch. But tactically and positionally, I think he's really, really improved over the last few years. And I think that might be the difference between where he was under Smith and where he is now, because he's sort of honed that rough diamond a little bit and he knows how to get himself involved a little bit more. What I like a lot is that he'll play a forward pass, and what most people would do would be they play the forward pass, and obviously everyone's ambitious. You don't really want to do that and make progress and then countenance the idea that you might actually have to go backwards and it might not go quite as well as planned. But what he's really good at is, spreading the ball, moving it, and then just dropping into a little bit of space behind the person who he's passed to, so that if they do need to turn back, he's always there and they always have an option. And actually, when you're trying to play out from the back, what a lot of people look at, and the people that end up getting criticised a lot of the time, are those who are looking up, who are running out of options, who are taking a little bit too long on the ball and end up losing it. But equally important are the players who are willing to be available for it, who want to take it from the defenders. And actually Nunez is one of them, and really, really helps Norwich when they're trying to pass it out from the back, stops those defenders sort of dawdling on the ball because they don't know where to pass it, because worst comes to worst, they've always got Nunez in that position and he knows how to pick up that position. But also he has that technical quality that maybe he takes it in a pretty deep position, in not a fantastic position, and he can then reignite a Norwich attack and get them into a good position. So that's what I've really liked and really noticed from Nunez in recent weeks. I think his positioning has been a little bit better. His reaction to where the ball might go and his reading of the game has been really, really good. And actually, he's allowed that football intelligence to shine a little bit, as well as that technical ability. So for me, that's where some of the improvement has come. Of course, there are things like physicality, consistency that just come from working on the training pitch with the coaches. But I think tactically, he's also shown improvement, and that's part of the reason why he's been so excellent for Norwich in recent weeks. Let's hope he can produce another fine performance against Coventry at Carrow Road this weekend, but hopefully he doesn't score the only goal again and we can have a little bit more of a cracker. It does feel like it might be quite an exciting one when you put these two teams on paper, and of course we'll have every minute of it covered across our channels. So go to pinkun.com/subscribe if you haven't already, and you'll have access to all of our premium content. Thank you very much for joining me on Tactics Board. I'll see you again very soon, when hopefully we are talking about a positive result for Norwich against Coventry City.